Oh, hey, how's it going, man?
Oh, it's going great. Thank you.
Thank you for Zooming with me. One of the perks of all this pandemic crazy is that we can do this over Zoom instead of in person in the studio. But I'm Lindsay Marie from 93X. So good to talk to you today, Billy.
Thank you.
I wanted to start where, well, at the top of where we're at right now, and that's the release of all three acts of Atum. 4 years in the making, but really, you claim the story begins with Melancholy, back in '95.
Yeah, I mean, we did a concept album, I didn't tell the band we were doing one. They only found out later, but it's basically set this idea of a day in the life of one person. And I think maybe only Flood, the producer, really knew what I was after. And then when the band was breaking up in 1999, I proposed doing this other concept album, which would follow up kind of what happened to that character as the band's splintering apart. So I never thought that the band would ever even get back together after we broke up. So to do a concept album some 20 something years after the band broke up, it was a weird thing to pick back up and try to even pick up the characters. It's like I had to kind of go through my memories and try to pick what I was really interested in even back then to find some sense of continuity. Yeah, and then of course the pandemic, I didn't anticipate that. So that became part of the story too, because we were all locked up in our houses for God knows how long and contemplating, the meaning of all sorts of things, including freedom.
Everybody else was making sourdough bread, and here you're like, I'm going to embark on a rock opera. It's finally happening. I have the time. Let's give Gen X the wall, shall we? Let's do that.
Well, I tried to give them the wall. I actually talked about the wall in '95 when Melancholy came out. I said it's kind of our generation's kind of attempt at the wall. So I don't know what this would be in that relationship. Maybe the wall too, something.
It's a progressive rock trip spanning over 2.5 hours. I had a lot of fun with an edible and all three acts of the Atum.
Oh, I love that. See, I always say that's the album was probably best enjoyed with a Gummy Bear. You see.
It's legal in Chicago, and I know you're a Chicago boy.
Yeah.
Taking it worldwide, though, this is this tour that you're about to embark on. You're bringing it to the masses. This is a chance to perform this rock opera in front of the people. Are you nervous about it?
We haven't decided to perform the whole thing yet. So at the moment, we're really only playing about 5 or 6 songs a night. So that's easy. You just cherry pick the best songs. But as far as staging the whole thing, I'm still hopeful that at the right time we'll be able to do it with guests involved, because I'd have to sing 31 songs, and I'm certainly capable of doing it, but I think it'd be very hard to do, and I think it would get a little monotonous in terms of trying to stage it with some sense of the story narrative live, without the benefit of, like, let's call it the Gummy Bear part of it all. So that's the hope, and hopefully there'll be enough of an audience behind this record that down the road we'll be able to do that.
I know you're excited to take it out on the road. The World is a Vampire tour. It'll embark on July 28th. I believe the closest stop to Minnesota is Clarkston, Michigan, which used to be a trash heap. I grew up on it. It's actually a really great venue. Just a little bit of a haul from Minnesota. I know you've done interviews before, and you were discussing regional sounds. How Seattle had the psychedelic scene, the West Coast drugs, and then but you were more influenced by the rock out of Motown, out of Detroit, Bob Seger, and Ted Nugent. Do you think like regional rock is dead? Is it a relic of the past in a post-internet world?
That's a fantastic question. I think the difficulty is what was great about those scenes back in the day, and even going into the late '80s, early '90s, was you didn't have the internet to kind of cross-pollinate. So people were living in their own kind of ecosystem and took time to develop what was good or not so good about what they were doing. And then, of course, they were influencing those around them. I think now the minute anybody gets any traction, well, their attention is turned to the internet. And so you got this kind of global voice, but I don't think that global voice creates the hothouse effect that you need to create a Bob Seger, a Ted Nugent, an MC5, and a Stooges at the same time.
It's almost generic sounding now. You have people writing and recording in different cities. It's very easy. I mean, that's where the technology has propelled us towards.
Well, so social media creates if you think about it this way, it creates a false economy, right? Nobody thought my band was great until we were great. Does that make sense? Like, we were told we were not, we not only were we told we were not great, we were told we weren't even good for years. And then suddenly there we were. Well, maybe those experiences of not being praised and having to figure something out forced us to make decisions which ultimately had to do with what made us successful. And I don't mean successful in terms of selling anything. I mean successful in that we believed in what we were doing, even when we faced. I remember going up to Minneapolis one time, circa 1989, and facing an audience of 20 hipsters at a bar with their arms crossed, and nobody was interested in what we were doing, and barely anybody clapped when we finished the song. We packed up and we went back to Chicago. So those experiences are part of who we are and became. You know, they steal your resolve to make decisions about what your music is. If you're trying to always appeal to a crowd that clicks, well, that's a false economy, because things that people tend to click on are things that they already know. They don't click on the unknown, they click on the known.
That makes a lot of sense. And, you know, it also makes sense that Smashing Pumpkins is that Chicago band, that gritty Midwest, you fight and you keep going. The Pumpkins weren't handed anything, and you kind of, I don't know, have you carried that on your shoulders all these years? Are you still fighting like that?
Well, that's a really long answer, and I'm going to try to be really short about it. We were not embraced by Chicago when we started, which really was made us unhappy. Let's put it that way. Then when we were successful, Chicago kind of wrapped its arms around us, and we thought, okay, fine, we'll accept the mantle of being Chicago's most successful band. Then when the band fell apart or started to fall apart, then that same crowd sort of abandoned us and me. And then I spent a long time in Chicago being told, it's good you had a good run. Welcome back. Here's a shovel, start digging a ditch. So Chicago's always had a strange relationship with me, and it's changed a little bit in the last few years, because I think owning a restaurant and being part of the local community and being part of charity, I think has changed some people's sort of thought that I wasn't just this guy living in a castle, watching Dracula on repeat. You know what I mean? But I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm very proud to be a Chicagoan, and I've been very proud to take Chicago's music to the world. But I think one of the problems with Chicago as a culture is Chicago always has viewed itself as a second or a third city. And in many ways, that's why Detroit, for example, had more success, because Detroit refused to accept a second-class status, where Chicago always kind of accepts its status kind of in a grumbling kind of working class way. And that's always been one of my great criticisms of the city. And I think that dovetails with my experiences here. And now the city's changed so much, I don't even know what it is at this point.
Okay. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I wish I could talk more, Billy, but thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Lyndsey.
Over and out. Bye.